I'm the son of a black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas. And for as long as I live, I will never forget that in no other country on earth is my story even possible.
When the history books are written, in the first paragraph, if not the first sentence, it's going to say the first African-American president.
Yeah.
There are so many expectations, as it turned out, as to what that meant. Did you wrestle with that? How would you articulate the expectations that were thrust upon you?
I think that it's hard to generalize. I think the whole country took some pride, and it was legitimate that we had traveled enough along our journey from slavery and Jim Crow and discrimination to the point where we could elect somebody who looked like me to the highest office in the land, and elect me pretty handily. So I think that pride is something that was a positive. I think it pointed to where we need to go. I think any talk of it being a post-racial America after my election was never realistic. I think it was.
But that was a lot of that talk, though.
Well, I think, in fact, that talk was not only naive, but I think created some problems down the road. Because two things happened. Number one, it meant that African Americans and other minority groups might have felt as if the problems that had built up over centuries, a wealth gap, an education gap, significant poverty, that those things could be addressed overnight. On the other hand, among, I think, some white voters who sincerely were glad to see that the country had made this breakthrough, there was also maybe an unrealistic notion that somehow, okay, that means discrimination's over.
But is there a third group that just didn't want a black president?
Well, undoubtedly so. There's no doubt about that. But in the same way that you wouldn't expect in a 4-year span or an 8-year span to undo the entire legacy of race in America, social attitudes also don't transform in 4 years or 8 years. It happens over generations. And so, sure, there is residual racial prejudice in this society.
And I know you don't believe that we're more divided racially today.
No,
and historically, you're right. There are some historic markers that would suggest otherwise.
Pretty strong ones.
Yeah, there's some pretty strong ones. but the fact is, I think a lot of people looked at you and said, this is the guy that's going to make those arguments about inequality. He's going to use this platform. I think any of us African Americans who work in business or prominent roles feel this struggle. Am I being black enough? Am I too black? Am I not black? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think everybody wrestles with the fact that we are Americans, and we take great pride in this country that has given us so many blessings, and the fact that because of the color of our skin, we are bound to a history that has often been cruel.
You know the struggle I'm talking
about. And so the way I have always resolved this, and I talk to my daughters about this, is that my starting point is not to assume the worst in others, but assume the best, to find those areas where it is possible to find common ground. And hopefully a generation that has been raised under my presidency will remember how I've talked about these issues in a way that's respectful of everybody.
But there was one moment that stood out to a lot of people. It was the Reverend Pinckney funeral after the Charleston massacre. You delivered the eulogy, and then you went farther than talking about it. I'm going to read the quote. "Maybe we now realize the way racial bias can infect us even when we don't realize it, so that we're guarding against not just racial slurs,
but we're also guarding against the subtle impulse to call Johnny back for a job interview, but not Jamal.
Jamal wasn't getting called back for that interview 5 years earlier.
Yeah.
Why did you not talk about things in that explicit way before?
Well, you know, the truth of the matter is that there are going to be times where people will listen and times where they won't. There are going to be times where you got 15 issues and you got to figure out what am I going to be investing the most effort and energy in, and where does it make more sense, rather than to use the bully pulpit, to just do the work.
This whole week I've been reflecting on this idea of grace. The grace of the families who lost loved ones. The grace that Reverend Pickney would preach about in his sermons.
This was a moment when I think the entire country recognized not just the evil that had been perpetrated, but also this amazing response on the part of these people in this church who had seen friends and family gunned down.
If we can find that grace, anything is possible. If we can tap that grace, everything can change. Amazing grace.
There were open hearts at that moment.
And you were moved to sing Amazing Grace.
Yeah.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
You know, the interesting thing about the presidency is there aren't a lot of things that are spontaneous. A lot of things end up being scripted. By necessity, you have to be careful because anything you say can move markets or start wars. But you do look for moments of human connection, and in some ways those end up being the moments that are most meaningful.
You felt pretty free at that moment? I mean, were you on, you were a second-term president?
Well, I think I was looking at the two daughters of Reverend Pickney, who were younger than Millie and Sasha, but wasn't that long ago when they were in pigtails just like those girls. They were sitting in the front row.
May God continue to shed His grace on the United States of America.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.